What's up, guys? I'm back with another video, and this one is entitled Growth Starts Within, Part 6. We're on the 6th episode of this series, and the most important thing has been just encouraging you all to continue to grow and continue that process within yourself. So I want to start with the question, and the question is, what does a growing relationship look like when it's personal? I had to subconsciously ask myself that question a lot of times in a lot of different spaces. When I first started this journey, I had to look at my personal relationship with myself and recognize the flaws and the faults. When I first started taking basketball a lot more serious, I had to recognize the voice that was in my head that would respond to my misses, that would respond to the adversity I was facing. I had to recognize the weight that it carried. When I would miss a shot and say I was trash, I would think I was trash. I would remember all the times I was trash before I actually started working and changing that. And that really dawned on me early. My self-talk, my personal relationship, and how I view myself is very important because it also shows up when you meet someone. That confidence is built internally. It's not just externally. It's not with what you wear or, the things you do on a day-to-day. You really build that confidence internally, by reminding yourself of who you are and what you can do. And that's where I had to start recognizing things. Growth starts within is a phrase that reminds us that if we aren't at our best internally, then we will make avoidable mistakes externally. And that's the thing. You don't want to keep making mistakes that are avoidable. You want to make mistakes that you can change and then learn from. Some things are easy to avoid. It's easy to avoid the fact that you might miss and want to talk down, but instead just tell yourself keep going. That's an easy avoidable mistake. But then there might be another thing where my footwork might be off, like in this situation right here. Footwork was off, so my shot was off, and that's not that easy to avoid. So you have to maybe go a little slower, be more precise. And with growth starting within, it's the same way. That's how I look at things. You start very small, maybe with that voice in your head. How is he responding to things? How does he look at my life? How does he view my decisions? And then you branch off into how you are handling yourself in these situations, how you are impacting others in these situations. And that little detail, minor detail change, minor focus, or detailed focus helped me identify my need for help and figuring out what that actually meant. At 19, I didn't really know how much help I needed or how little help I needed. I just knew I needed help. And the best thing I could have done was help myself. In that space, I had to learn that, I deal with a lot and have dealt with a lot. But it's about growing and becoming a lot more than what I was facing. And that's where I started this series myself back when I was 19. I had to really recognize that I wanted to grow and that I was limited in growth. And that comes from a lot of different spaces, maybe growing up or, maybe the troubles of, friendships or relationships and, parents, school. There's a lot of different stressors that could limit you as a person. And I think it was important for me to figure out what that was, so finding out the issue and then trying to solve it. It wasn't just going to be solved immediately. It wasn't going to be solved with, one choice or, one change. It's a consistent thing. So making that one choice and one change led to another choice and another change, which continues to trickle down in a domino effect and continuously evolve in my personal life. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do. In these videos, in this series, Growth Starts Within is just the notion to remind people that you can grow, you can make changes, but if you're not doing it internally, then everything you think you're doing is futile. It doesn't make sense. And that's where you have to really comprehend the aspect of growth. Growing on a personal level is really just the day-to-day work, being disciplined, being mindful, recognizing your flaws and making that change, getting up the next day and doing it over again, and then also giving yourself rest, giving yourself grace. These are all kinds of things that tie into your personal relationship, and without them, you limit yourself. I can't be the best player on the court if I'm not being graceful, if I'm not showing myself some understanding, to why I'm missing, to how I'm missing. If I don't give myself that grace, then guess what? I'm going to struggle. I'm going to continuously struggle. It won't just be a one-time struggle. I'm going to struggle on that day-to-day notion because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to in that day-to-day to remind me that I'm doing great. And that's what I feel is important when you understand what growth is. That day-to-day struggle and battle within yourself is really where the beauty comes from. I've told a lot of people growing up in relationships, I won't come between you and you. And I encourage people to, remember that for themselves. Or when you're dealing with somebody else, don't try to come between them and themselves. The work they have to do within, that voice that they're listening to, or the changes they have to make to comprehend themselves better. Don't get in between that, because that's a personal battle of growing. And we all have to grow through that. Grow through it, go through it, and deal with it. And the issue that I've learned amongst my peers is that a lot of them don't want to do that. They don't want to deal with their personal struggles because a lot of times they don't feel like it was their fault, which is fair. It wasn't my fault that I was emotionally distraught growing up or had to deal with abuse and trauma. That wasn't my fault. But you know what is on me? How I deal with that moving forward. As a 26-year-old man now, that's my fault. How I look at things, that was on me. How I change things, that was on me. So I had to make the cognitive decision to do the right thing. And that was healing and forgiving my past troubles to rebuild a relationship. And that was, that could show up in many different situations. So, for example, I had to rebuild my personal relationship. Like I said, you got self-talk and you understand who you are in one space. But then when you actually recognize that it may be negative or it's not conducive for your growth or you haven't been benefiting yourself, you have to change that. So recognizing and rebuilding yourself may look like just standing in the window and staring out the window, staring at the sky. That could be a change. Now I'm meditating more, really listening to that inner voice and not just responding to it. That's changing that and rebuilding that relationship that I may have had before. Maybe I was immediate to respond. I will go through something and then just do something. Instead now, maybe I go through something and then I try to figure out what I can do. That is how you change. That is how you grow. And that's how you rebuild your relationship. Another example would be the relationship I've had with my mom growing up. And my mom had a lot of issues, a lot of back and forth, a lot of troubles, a lot of traumas. And it all stems from the fact that she had to raise a man, being a single mother. So she also had to give herself grace. She also had to rebuild her own relationship and recognize the weight that she's carrying within herself. But that also reflects on the personal level between me and her. So I had to also rebuild, heal, and forgive those past troubles. I had to forgive my mom because she was once someone's daughter. I had to forgive my mom because she was also too learning, growing, making decisions to figure out what was the best choice. That don't mean she made the best choices. That don't mean she did the best things. And it also don't mean her self-talk was up to par to remind herself that she's doing great. Maybe she thought she wasn't doing the best and still continued to do worse because that's all she knew. And who am I to judge her? Who am I to be upset for the rest of my life about it? No, I had to heal. I had to forgive her. I had to let go. And in that space, me and her was able to build such a strong relationship after that. Because we recognized that, hey, at one point I was this person, and at this point I'm trying to be this person. And if you are still mistreating me, or if you are still holding me accountable for the things that I have changed, I have grown through, and I have made the proper decisions to work through, then you are looking at me from a past view. You don't see me now. You see me as I was before, which, guess what? Isn't something you would want to do for yourself. You wouldn't want people to look at you like you were at 25 when you 35. I'm 26. I don't want people to see me as a 16-year-old Juan. I'm 26. There's been a lot of changes in those 10 years that a lot of people may not recognize because they haven't took the time to heal. They haven't took the time to forgive me or even rebuild a relationship with me. And that's okay too. We also have to understand that with growth, everybody can't come along. Everybody won't be on that same wavelength. They're still going to see that 16-year-old Juan and stand on that. That is who I am. But that don't mean that that's what I have to accept or have to be around or even fight the narrative to change it in their mind. That's where you also have that interpersonal relationship. And when it's strong, you can smile at people and just turn away. You can look at them and, give them a head nod and keep it pushing, because at the end of the day, that's their perception of you. That'll make it true, and that leads you into another space of understanding where growth resides. Growth resides in respecting the differences with others and being able to accept them as well. We all different people. Like even on this court, we have 4 different play styles, 4 different characters on the court. 4 different players that play 4 different ways. And if we don't respect each other's differences, then guess what? Now we're getting into it because he doesn't shoot like me. And he's not as good as me because he can't do this. That don't make him less than. That makes him not a shooter. He's still a good player. He still does other things, and that's where you grow into recognizing your worth. When you understand who you are and what you're doing, and you respect yourself for it, it's nothing nobody could tell you. It's nothing nobody can say. Because at the end of the day, you have self-respect. And that also goes into understanding your growth process. You won't be the same tomorrow. You will wake up and want to be different next week. Next month will come and you want better for yourself. When next year arrives, you don't want to have the same money in your pocket. And guess what? That's how you respect your difference and accept the fact that, hey, I won't be the same person. We're not forever going to be young. Sooner or later, we're going to get older. But guess what? Right now, we young. So you have to respect where you are as well. And that's all a part of the process. And I think what becomes difficult is when you see people in spaces you wish to be in, you want to be in, or you feel you deserve to be in. It becomes complicated because you don't even appreciate yourself for the spaces you've already made it to. That it's not easy growing and healing. It's not easy, making changes. It's not easy identifying the fact that you need help. Like who said that was going to be easy? Who came up with the fact that, hey, saying that you need help was going to be easy? No, that was never the thing. Who said that forgiving and forgetting was going to be easy? It's not. None of this is easy. So when it comes to making the proper changes, that's where I use my platform to encourage people. We are all going to be different, but we all have the same tools: growing, healing, processing, understanding, respecting. It's a lot of things we all can do alike. And that's what I'm here using my platform for. I'm different. I could easily be cracking jokes all day and trying to make y'all laugh and creating content that's funny. But that's not going to help y'all become better people. That's going to keep y'all distracted, and that's not what I want. So I had to make a change in my mind, figure out in my head what that looked like. And at 20, it looked like one thing, but 26, it looks completely different. And that's where growth starts within really shows itself strong. I'm building myself up and encouraging others to do the same without force. I'm not forcing y'all to watch this. I'm just encouraging y'all. I'm not demanding y'all to come to my page and grow. Y'all need to get these lessons and grow. That's not me. I'm building myself up, and that's what I want for you guys. That's how you grow. You build yourself up, and you encourage others to build themselves up. You teach them wisdom. You give them strength. You teach them tools, the tools that helped you. It may be the same tools that have helped them, but if you're not giving them, guess what? Now you holding on to stuff that other people may need for their success and their livelihood. I won't hold back on how to shoot. I teach my boys all the time how to shoot, how to become better shooters, because I've worked on that myself. I've built myself up and became confident in my shot. That don't mean everybody else will be. I had to recognize the differences between me and someone else. But that all started with interpersonal work. It goes back to my first question. What does a growing relationship look like when it's personal? When it's personal, this has nothing to do with a growing relationship personally with someone else. No, my inner relationship with myself, the voice I have in my head, I recognize. The strength I have in my heart, I utilize. I go at it every day, and that's what I want for everyone else. I want y'all to see the differences in people. I want you to see that someone don't use their planner, and you encouraging them to do that. That don't mean they will, I want you to see them, see people as they are and show up for them the ways you can. That don't mean they gonna accept it. And that is where you have to appreciate the fact that you are growing. Sometimes everybody around you ain't growing, and that means you might have to change again. You might have to make another growth statement, which is what? Change your surroundings. Growth never stops. It's not limited to one notion and one idea. It's universal. For me, change is where God shows himself strong. You have to recognize yourself and someone else. I recognize God in my growth journey. I recognize my friends in my growth journey, my family in my growth journey. And I also recognize the role I have to play in this journey, whether it's with myself or with someone else. Growth starts within, but it impacts everything that surrounds the subject. If you want to grow as a player, you have to do the inner work. If you want to grow as a man, you have to heal. If you want to grow into success, you have to understand what it takes to be successful. That's neither here nor there. That's not saying that you're going to be the most successful person because you learn what success is. No. A successful man makes changes. Apple was very, very different compared to now. They didn't have iPhones. It wasn't even Apple. It was Macintosh. But they had to grow and evolve the company into Apple for it to be this billion-dollar company, trillion-dollar company. And that's how I look at things, even on that grand scheme of business or in a small scale of lead in a pencil. That lead that you using when you write, it changes. It conforms in another way. It may not be as sharp. It becomes dull. You have to reuse the lead. You might have to change the lead piece. That is growing. That is changing. And for me, that is what is important on the day-to-day. But it doesn't just happen overnight, man. And I don't know how to stress it in a way where you guys can really feel it. Like, the guy I was at 19 is nothing compared to the man I am at 26. But it didn't just happen from 19 to 20. I was still struggling, trying to even figure out what I wanted or who I was and what I wanted out of life. Come 20 to 21, I started to recognize myself, but then it's like, who am I in comparison to other people? I'm fresh. I'm just getting started. Where people been doing things that I'm trying to do, they've been doing it for years. Does that mean I'm not good enough? Does that mean I'm incapable? And that's where 22, 23 really kicked things into gear for me. My journey, my life isn't a compare and contrast battle. I'm not an author comparing myself to other authors. I'm not a basketball player comparing myself to other basketball players. I'm someone that's dedicated in my craft. And for me to evolve and become the best version of myself, I have to learn the craft. I have to learn about the greats that's in the craft and then mimic my game in accordance to the greatness that has been laid before me. That's like learning the fundamentals and then taking them and doing your best with it. And then now you have something completely different. I'll go back to that Macintosh example, Apple. There was a computer before Apple. Apple learned what the computer was and took it all the way to the best phone. That's growing, that's changing, that's evolving. And growth with that didn't just come from an idea and then a whole team of people said, let's do this. No, that growth started within the company, within the framework of an identity. And without you actually doing that work, without you understanding what it takes to change a Macintosh computer to a Mac iPhone or a Mac laptop, then you'll never know what it means to grow. You'll never know, because it starts within and it trickles into everything else.